So thank you for coming back, and we will kick off in just a minute. I wanted to mention those of us here yesterday, and I think that's most of us in the room, were really dazzled by Brian Austin's beautiful photography. And Brian has made available here at the Mercantile at the Lodge some signed posters that are available. As you're looking at me quizzically, Brian. So, you mentioned that he's also speaking at is it on April 20th? We'll hear it from the directly from the artist in a minute.
Well, thank you. You're very kind to mention that. We just released 2 posters of the Mickey Well that you see downstairs. They're posters of the eye, of the Mickey Well eye, and they're all signed, and they're in the Mercantile downstairs. And so... yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And also, while we've got Brian on the stage here, I'll mention that he will be speaking to us on April 20th as part of our conversations with eco-innovators right here at Cavallo Point. So thank you very much, Brian.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And now we move into our afternoon sessions, and I'd like to welcome back to the stage one of our champion moderators, Peter Lewis.
Where should we?
Shall we?
Okay.
All right, testing live. Good. All right. We're going to be talking about the North Pacific Gyre today. Mary Crowley went to sea sailing out of Sausalito several decades ago to an area of the North Pacific which she described as virtually pristine. She has since gone back, and it's not that way. Mary, can you tell us about your last trip to the Pacific Gyre and describe it for those who haven't seen it?
Okay, well, my last trip was in August, and we went out for a month on the Brigantine Kaisei, and what we found was really, in some ways, what we expected to find, but I think all of us felt it was even worse because there was a real proliferation of plastic debris. As some people talk about a floating island or twice the size of Texas, that's not really accurate information. The North Pacific Gyre, the area formed by the 4 ocean currents, is actually more closer to the size of the continental U.S., but it is not any solid mass of garbage. One encounters small little islands of garbage, sometimes in a current or around some of the derelict fishing gear that's out there, the ghost nets. But other than that, there's some areas of the gyre that have small amounts of garbage, and there's other areas where you'll be going through, and in half an hour you could count 300 or 400 pieces of garbage. And so it's more like you're going through fields of garbage. And the alarming part of the experience was you can do that day and night for several days. And so you get a sense of what a problem it is in terms of magnitude of plastic pollution.
And perhaps we should look at the video.
That would be good.
All right. They usually do this. Roll the video. Can we take the house lights down, too?
between 30 years ago sailing in this region and being out here now is a huge proliferation of plastic. The majority of what we've been picking up are more household items. They're things that you'd expect to see anybody throwing away in their garbage.
And we can use these kinds of bottles that we can identify and buy bottles of these same types to know how they've been weathered in oceanic environments. Specifically, how the surface has been changing is really interesting to us.
The goals of this expedition are threefold. One, to bring back photographs and film to show people what's out here. Two, to accomplish some very good science to tell people what is happening to the ocean.
To utilize the manta trawl was a twofold expectation. We wanted to catch myctophids, which is our mesopelagic fish that come up at night to feed. So we knew by trawling surface water at night we could collect them. And we also wanted to see what we were collecting on the surface water in terms of marine debris. So here in this sample that we got from our night trawl, we're seeing lots of sail jellies, and within one of the sail jellies right on top, we found a piece of foam. And we're starting to get more plastic in our samples as we go.
What you couldn't see from the boat and what you could see when they brought it up was very disturbing. All of what you bring up, you can't even see unless you're staring right down at it. I was surprised. It wasn't quite what I expected. It was worse in a lot of ways than what I expected.
One of the dramatic manta trawls pulled up lots of jellyfish and lots of pieces of plastic. And you could see pieces of plastic inside the jellyfish, outside the jellyfish, and you could see the jellyfish ingesting the plastic. And it just makes one realize that a lot of sea life may be ingesting plastic. And this is very bad for the whole ecosystem.
Overall, there is an impact, and what we're going to define is how severe that impact is.
One that people are talking about very much and that we are studying is the possibilities of the POPs, the persistent organic pollutants, being ingested by the fish and getting into the food web.
It's nothing like an 8-continent or anything like that. But it's even more striking to see the small plastic debris everywhere where we look. Even with the first trawl, it's only, I believe, 400 miles off the coast of California.
I can't even begin to name all the things that are out here and that we've collected. There are myriad threats when it comes to the plastic floating around here.
We came across a derelict net, a ghost net. It was a combination of a lot of different kinds of nets, some gill nets that were just meshed in with the whole mesh. Just a big old death roller the way it is right now.
We do have a catch torch. We do have oxyacetylene. How big is that? That's pretty big, isn't it?
We are looking at different ways of passively collecting the plastics so we could launch energy-efficient collection methods.
The ocean is our life source. Not only is it a place where we see enjoyment and where we have fun and love it, but it is where we get our life and where we get our breath from. If we ruin it, that's the end of us. The ocean and the earth, they'll survive, but we may not.
I am very committed to finding solutions to this marine debris problem in the Pacific. We are out here to try to accomplish really good science and to really seek solutions for picking up the debris.
Some of you may have seen news reports this week about the discovery of an Atlantic gyre, another area of pollution in the Atlantic Ocean that some say could rival that in the Pacific. One thing you may see in those news stories that come out this week are various experts saying that this cannot be cleaned up. I was surprised and delighted to hear Mary say that her mission is to clean up the Pacific gyre. And would you tell us a little bit about that?
Surely. And I would say, like Architects for Humanity, whatever we discover in terms of good ways to clean up the Pacific, we will share, because the Atlantic gyre, the Indian Ocean gyre, they're all accumulating garbage. We believe that the North Pacific is currently the worst, but we think the Atlantic is not far behind, and I'm sure the Indian Ocean will catch up if we don't change our ways globally. And from being out there, I can tell you that we can definitely use the technology we have right now to fish for plastics. When you have these hundreds of pieces of plastic floating on the ocean, we can capture them and we can get them out of the ocean so they won't break down and become part of the plastic soup that one finds. Also, I would definitely not want to go out there again unless we had the capability of removing this debris, and particularly the ghost nets, which you saw in there towards the end of our trip. We decided we would pick up one ghost net, and we started to pick it up, and it probably weighed 2.5 tons. And so we had to cut off a piece of it and bring as much as we could, thinking it would be useful for museum displays and education. But this year, when we go out there, we will have a tug and barge and crane and fishing vessels, and so we actually are going to do cleanup. Now, there's several levels of cleanup. I mean, one could talk about cleaning all the little pieces of plastic, because both on the Scripps vessel New Horizon and on Kaisei, every single manta trawl, the surface level trawls you saw, contain plastic. And so getting all those little pieces out was what we were experimenting with some of the passive technologies. And we hope to figure out a way to do some of that cleanup, but that's still in development. But getting the big pieces is easy and important because it relieves some of the burden on the ocean and the ocean life.
What are your plans? What are you going to do with this mess when you go out this summer?
Well, when we bring the debris back, we are going to be recycling it. And we actually are looking at a variety of different methods, because since we've been publicizing what we're doing, we've had lots of different recycling people coming to us saying, you know, my technology would be great for this. So I have a team of engineers who are working to choose like the 3 best methods. And so then we'll divide the debris between them to see which one works the best.
A bake-off.
Yes, yes. Because ultimately, we would love to figure out how to retrofit a ship. And so it could be out in the gyre, say, for 4 or 5 months, and be fed the debris by fishing boats and process it right on station so that we're not transporting debris around. And such a ship could go to different parts of the world and do this, or one could have a fleet of these ships.
There's no shortage of need.
No.
When we come back after the next video, I want to ask you how people can help with your project.
Okay.
But right now we have another video coming from the Pacific Gyre.
everyone at Turning the Tide. This is David, sitting on the Plastiki. As you can see, we're out here in the middle of nowhere, as far away from land as you could possibly be. I'm sorry that we couldn't organize a live connection, but unfortunately, as you can see, it's been overcast here for the last few days, and our power battery is pretty low. We're running this whole vessel on renewables, on solar and on wind. You can probably see the wind turbines going behind me. Life out here is pretty good so far. We've been seeing, sporadic patches of plastic. We're actually heading south. We're not going into the northern drive, but we're going south towards the ITZ, which is the International Tropical Conversion Zone, where we anticipate to see a little bit more plastic debris. We've seen, the usual suspects floating past. We've seen some nets and some buoys, a few jerry cans and bottles, and little patches of kind of localized debris, mainly plastic. The crew's doing well. We're all now getting into the swing of things. It's day 21. We've probably got about another 15 or 16 days until we get to the Line Island. So it's a pretty long time to be out here at sea. Every day we're having to fight the elements, the wind and the waves, and the salt starts to corrode things. Right behind me here, only yesterday the sail, one of the head sails actually ripped, so we've been having to repair that. As you can hear, it's a constant noise and wind and shuffling, and you're probably losing me right now. But life is pretty good. We've been catching some fish. We caught a dorada last night and had fresh fish for dinner with some of our organic and sustainable vegetables that we were lucky enough to work with local farmers around the Bay Area and Marin County as well, specifically to put together some delicious meals that we get to eat every night. The message is getting out there to the world. It's with the help of folks like you who are meeting, convening, projects like Kaisei and Algalita and other projects who are working on the marine plastics issue, like the Plastic Pollution Council, all coming together to stop this issue that really is unnecessary. We need to stop really using single-use dumb plastics where we can, and try and think about our roles as ambassadors on this planet to try and set the tone for the next 100 years. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys continue to check out the site. Lots of cool updates and blogs and videos, and I look forward to coming back to the Bay Area when we're finished and giving you a first-hand recount of what went on the Plastiki during these months at sea. Thanks everyone, and good luck with the rest of the day's conference. Bye.
That was through the wonders of the Inmarsat solar-powered transmission system on the Plastiki. You can follow their progress at www.theplastiki.com, or you can follow their tweets, in which he didn't mention it, but they've spent a great deal of the first 15 days of this voyage leaning over the rails, getting used to the sea swells. So, all right. I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to tell people how they could help in this project.
Well, I think everyone is welcome to take a look at our website, which is www.projectkaisei, K-A-I-S as in Sierra, E-I.org. And, everyone can help by spreading the word of this problem. And we can all make changes, just small changes in our behavior to use less disposable plastic. And we can also use our purchasing dollars to reward companies that are paying attention to using recycled plastics or doing things in the most responsible ways. And we are still looking for some additional funding to help us with we want to get 2 fishing vessels out there, and the tug and barge and Kaisei, because we really want to bring back a significant amount of debris out of the ocean. So, and I think I've talked to several people about educational curriculum, which we're working on, because we really want to be sure we're educating youth about this issue so that it won't continue, because we definitely need to stop using the oceans as a dumping ground. Yesterday somebody was saying, the problem of the gyres really starts in our refrigerators and our shopping bags. Well, it starts actually in our whole lifestyle. And but I'm very optimistic because actually we're hearing from lots of companies that want to make changes and are making changes. And so I believe that all of us can influence things to head in better and more sustainable directions.
Well, thank you for doing what you're doing. And bon voyage this summer.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter and Mary, for that sobering reminder of the need to clean up our act and keep plastics out of our ocean. Our next panel, Feeding the World, looks at a critical relationship between our environment and human health, namely the food we eat. Our moderator is the host and creator of the new NPR program about the decisions people make that change not just a little bit, but everything. His show, Snap Judgment, debuts this week. He is a graduate of the University of Michigan Law School and has worked as an educator, diplomat, community activist, actor, political strategist, United Nations advisor, fist shaker, mountain hollerer, and foot stomper before leaping into his career in the media. He has composed music for Kant's Stove, dance performances here in San Francisco, performed live spoken word poetry in Detroit, joined a band in Indonesia, written several screenplays, painted a daring series of self-portraits, and once upon a time released a blues album. He's being mic'd now for sound. In just a moment, I'll be happy to welcome Glynn Washington to the stage. Glynn.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hi there. Can everyone hear me okay? I am excited because never before in history has someone given such an easy job. This panel that we're about to introduce to you today, you have the basic bios. I want to go through them a little bit and share a little something I learned about them individually. Actually, Ruchi Jain, I'm going to give you first because Ruchi just got here from India, her first time in America. Let's give her a big happy American hello. Super young person with all these ambitions, started her own NGO in India called PRAN, and it means life in Hindi. She works to help rural and urban communities develop sustainable agriculture, water. Ruchi in her own place. She puts her family practices what they preach. She grows her own food. I had to say this. She grows her own food. She lives in Mumbai. Her family grows their own food there. I mean, if they can grow it in the middle of Urbania like Bombay, you can do it anywhere as well. Please come on up here. Hi Vo. Now, again, you can read the bio, but the thing that is most interesting to me about Hai is, sure, he's a fabulous activist, change doer, agent of all things good, but how did he get there? This young man, come up here for a minute, Hai. Hai Vo used to weigh 250 pounds, but he doesn't anymore. This kind of transformational experience personally is what helped him leap off to transform the world around him. Farmer, activist, everything. Can't wait to get into it with Hai. Now, Professor Stephen Schneider. Again, he was part of a large group of UN scientists who won the Nobel Peace Prize for their work on climate change. Fine, well and good. But what he just mentioned to us out on front was that he is a distinguisher of rats. Rats. Professor that was off the
right.
right.
Schneider kills the bad ones
but save the good ones, the indigenous ones. And I think that this is kind of, this whole killing the bad and saving the good is going to come up a lot today. Professors, would you come on up, please? Thank you. Okay. And my goodness, this, I grew up in Michigan to a very, let's say, non-middle class family. We're the bottom rung of that whole equation. And we had to eat government cheese and farina. I still don't know what farina is. I've never seen the farina plant. But I know that my life as a youngster would have been quite different had I had some Alice Waters sprinkled around. The best chef in the country, the Berkeley program for the kids. Please come up on here and share some wisdom with us. This is fabulous. The discussion today could go a lot of different ways with this group of people. Again, but because I have the easy job of being moderator, let's keep it provocative here for a little bit. We're talking today about how climate change and our impact on the environment is playing into the need, the necessity for us to look at different ways of feeding ourselves. 6.9 billion people right now. We're going to go to 8 billion within the next 10 years, or something like that. I got to ask the Nobel laureate. You can do this here. I can ask the Nobel laureates about that. But my big question for you, first off, is we're feeding a lot of people right now, and we did it because of the Green Revolution. How dare someone suggest that this aspect, this petroleum-fueled agriculture, should be changed when it's been so successful at feeding billions of people? Panel.
That's okay. Hey, come on.
Well, being shy and retiring, I didn't want to go first. Well, there are, a lot of things that we do that get us started, but that doesn't mean you continue them forever. I mean, if we, we got to eat stuff early on. When you were a teenager, I remember I used to eat incessantly, and I was like him. And when I did that when I was 35, I also got like him, but now he's back. So the key is that you can start that way, but you can't always continue. In the process of the Green Revolution, where we use technology to improve agriculture, we also displaced workers. So in the process of improving yields, you moved a lot of people into cities living in slums. So there's an old expression, the ecologists will say, in nature you can't change just one thing. You bring in one species, and all of a sudden you get this whole cascade of things you didn't expect. It's also true in human nature. So what we have to try to do is say, all right, we went through a phase where these were helpful, but if it turns out that the improved quality of life that you get from fossil fuels, from Green Revolution, from a whole variety of technologies, when you multiply that times too much consumption and too many people, now you actually start losing the very quality of life that it helped give you, and what you have to do is transform your style, transform your technology, and your notion of sufficiency. So we're in a stage now where we're learning that, yes, we needed those to start, and we're still going to have to transition out of them, but transition to what, who's going to pay for it, and how we're going to get the culture to change.
So I come from India, and Green Revolution has really failed in India. And I'm going to tell you a 1,000-year story wherein agriculture was really successful, and then you had the British come in, there was colonialism. But before that, traditional agriculture was really booming, and that's why India was really famous. A lot of people came, took away all our food, and that's why we had everybody come in. And then when the British were there, they took away a lot of our food for tax, which accounts for all the famine which came in at the end of the 19th century. So there was this void, which the Green Revolution came and filled in. But like Professor said, that this was a very temporary phase. We need to look at more sustainable ways which were there before and find a middle path of what exists today and there. That doesn't mean we just totally don't account for the traditional agriculture. We need to go local and find self-sufficient systems. This is what I feel.
You pass the mic down. So actually,
I guess I have a mic on.
I'm sorry, that's my fault then, because you put the your money where your mouth is with this, a lot of ways.
Well, it's just very hard for me to think about sort of going towards sustainability. I think there are things that we need to do that can make a complete change. That there's not like sort of upgrading the food in the schools over a period of time and just feeding the kids that can afford it. That's not good enough. We really have to go right back to kindergarten and teach every child, bring all children into a new relationship to food that connects them to stewardship of the land, that teaches them the values that we're going to need to live on the planet together. And if you go right there and you have a criteria for the buying that says you need to support, local, sustainable production, you go right there and you pay the money, then you nourish the children, you feed them these important ideas and values, you give the money to the people who are taking care of the land, and you grow up learning what's important. And it's really, I think, so vital that we focus on education. I mean, I know there are many, many people and many people in this room who are doing remarkable work and sort of holding the dam. And we need that to happen while these children grow up in it. But it's going to take a real act of the government and philanthropists to put the money there and to see what happens. I have to say that I was very excited when I came in because I met a gentleman who has an architecture firm called Architecture for Humanity. And he's doing a project in Haiti right now. And he's designing it with an edible schoolyard, with a garden. Because he asked them, how are you going to feed the kids? They had no idea. Well, you grow that. And you feed the children. So I'm for trying to figure out every way that we can collaborate that is pleasurable and desirable, and yet the end is so delicious and transformational.
Chef Walters, you said something about pay the money. And it oftentimes comes to this. You're an activist. You're a grassroots person who makes things happen. Where is this money going to come from? Who's going to pay it? And when's it going to happen?
Well, please forgive me. I'm having dust allergy reactions to this room, so I'll do the best that I can. So I just really want to go quickly back. I think the overproduction of our industrial food society has created the overconsumption of our food. Unhealthy overconsumption, which I'm a product of, and I feel like there's a lot of the money that we're talking about. I work with the Real Food Challenge, a campaign to increase sustainable food on college campuses, and when we're looking at how do we get food, this type of food, into our universities, we're really looking at money, and it's coming in from all different angles. It's coming in from students who purchase food, it's coming in from government subsidies, it's coming in from people, consumers, and so I feel like depending on the institution or the community that you're working with, we really have to look at different angles of how to bring money to create the food with the values that we want.
What is the food of 20 years supposed to look like? 20 years from now. Right now, it's Big Mac. We had to double down. I can't wait to get my first double down fried chicken sandwich. It's going to be delicious.
What's a double down?
A double down is 2 pieces of chicken with 2 pieces of cheese and 2 pieces of bacon. No bun that you put into your body. This is what, and this is the new product. This is what the evil geniusi at PepsiCo fried chicken thought would be a really good. Do you serve the double down to the kids there? Water. Do you have a double down sandwich that you serve? My question really is, what are we going towards? What are we going to be eating? Are we trying to prop up the current system to make it different inputs and have the same thing we have now? Or is there something that we could actually be going towards that might have, by necessity, a different finance and biological and mechanism, an eco-mechanism with how we interact with the environment? Where are we going?
Why don't you begin? But I definitely have a comment about that.
Yeah. So I would speak as a young generation, and I work with Indian Youth Climate Network, and I've been with 350.org as India coordinator. And we try to do some amazing events and do a few initiatives. And when you actually went out there and you saw this urban class, and then you have a lot of young rural people, and you have different diversity. So for once, they want a healthy lifestyle. And you have this entire urban product which is coming up. Oh, we like fast food as well. But I think somewhere down the line, there are external factors who are not letting the healthy food come into place. And this is where I would like to ask you, how do we find that answer, and how do we allow them to leave us alone?
I just have to say that that there's. It's not that I wouldn't like fast food sometimes, but it's fast, slow food. It's knowing where that hot dog comes from, whose meat's in the hot dog, how the bun was made, where the onions came from, how you did the ketchup. I mean, we're talking about supporting the people who are taking care of the land, and we have to ask those questions. I mean, your chicken sandwich, like that. I mean, I want to know where the chicken came from. Exactly where the chicken came from. I want to know that the people were paid the right money to do that kind of work. Oh, I don't know.
Not where that chicken came from.
I think we have to go right there, and I think that's where Michelle Obama is going. I mean, she's going out to the garden, and she's talking about real food. And we have an addiction to salt and sugar, and so it's very difficult to change your habits and you probably can talk about when you're overweight, and the temptations are everywhere. You can't walk down the street without little people trying to tell you something that's not good for you. And so you really have to go back to the school and bring children into a very positive relationship to food. I'm not telling them what to eat. I'm just wanting them to fall in love with kale, and they do, because of 13 years we've been working in the schools there, and these are teenagers, and when they grow it and they cook it, they all eat it, and it's.
Yeah, I just want to say, in your double down, I'm thinking about this. It's going to be really good for the economy because you'll be able to have double bypass, not just single. But the key is that I wanted to get to the money part. What was his name? The great British humorist who said that an economist is somebody who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. All of these systems are designed based on return on investment. They are not designed based on the values that we're hearing here. And until these values monetize, or we get a set of rules, it's going to be very difficult to change the system. At the same time, you can't be naive. We're scaling up to 8 billion people, and many, many live at nutritional margins for which we can talk about better ways to design. But remember, people used to suffer in famines, even in original kinds of things, because there would be years of bad weather. Now, how do you get around that? You have to have food reserves and other things. So we cannot just have a simple system. It's going to have to be a mixed system. So the question is, how do we transition the system so that it's built more on local, more on nutrition, more on health, but at the same time doesn't put you through a dangerous transition. And that's not going to be a trivial thing. That is going to involve costs and so forth. But until we start valuing diversity of culture and nature, valuing foods of this kind, so that we can produce them in a sustainable, reliable way, you cannot have a failure, because a failure is unacceptable. So therefore, there's going to be, as I said, a mixed design system. The best way to do that is to get people to talk about what are the range of values, what are the things cost. Not everything is going to cost more. Some of it might cost less, but we'll have to take a look at that whole question and add up the numbers. And sooner or later, we're going to have to deal with the two drivers, with the fact that we have vast overconsumption, mostly in the rich countries, and some overpopulation in the poor. And they both have to start doing an overshoot to where we can have a sustainable long term. So we're going to have a big battle about that transition because it will cost more and it might have failures. And that's what we'll have to work on.
I mean, really quickly, 4 years ago, I loved that double down. And I think I don't want to see that dangerous transformation happening to myself or for anyone, especially when I'm 43 and I see younger generations come after me. I think what's important is looking at what food looks like in 20 years. That's a very interesting question. It has a lot of dynamic realities, especially in America. As someone who is from an immigrant family, we're looking at not only diversifying nature, but also diversifying our diets here in America. My family and I, we can't find local bok choy in our area.
Yes, you can.
In Orange County, it's challenging. Sure and I'm sure I can. And
you're going to know how soon.
You can.
And if it's anything, I need to learn how to.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. I'll show you.
So it's this dynamic realities where we have to look at mixed values, and I agree with you. How do we set those?
Recently, after Cuba failed to was released as a client state of the Soviet Union, their caloric intake per person went down by 1,100 calories for 3 years or so. And they had to make a complete agricultural overhaul on how they were going to feed themselves. Now they're back up to their their pre-Soviet levels, but they're eating different things. They're eating more plant-based foods. They haven't gone organic, but they use fertilizers in a different way than they did in the past. Does that say anything about where we should be going, or does that have any impact on what we should be doing?
So it's really simple here. I think that I'm not criticizing anybody, or I'm not saying anything, but it's just that there are certain cultures in the world who have a bigger impact on cultures who are developing right now. And
who are you talking about? Point some fingers.
And I can see it. I can see it really, with my eyes open. And when I go to different parts of my country, I can give you an example. I was telling Professor that there is this community, Ladakhi community. It's in the Himalayas. They are a 1,000-year-old community. They had interdependence. Their ancestors, their grandparents stay with their family. They don't have nuclear families, and they produce their own local food. But lately, it's been destroyed because of tourism and the entire demonstration effect, which you call in economics. And how do you actually preserve a culture like that? Then let's go to the middle part of India for so-called development, to create houses, buildings, cities. And I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm not passing any judgment. It's just that they have been exploited. Why? Because we need more steel, we need more iron ore, we need tons of things like that. And then we go to different parts of coastal areas, and then we talk about negotiations, and we talk about climate change, and then we say, what are the solutions? Because we have development here, then we have climate change here, and then also we have to live that lifestyle. So And then you talk about feeding our population. So all these issues. And then you have the young generation who has this plethora, a confusion mind. Okay, let's just face that. So I would say if I'm actually, going to food with all these issues, I would say that just the seed which is there, don't look at it as one entity. It's a plant. It is a living being. It has its regenerative ability. And similarly, so do our populations. We just need to give ourselves time and make sure that seed is allowed to grow so that the MNCs don't affect it, the chemical fertilizers don't affect it, and let it grow in its environment. It's just respect for communities, sustainable, living. This is what
Let's get that. This is the elephant in the room. Is it possible to move forward at a sustainable clip in a sustainable way under the yoke of capitalism? Aren't you trying to give us a hippie argument that says capitalism is the problem and capitalism has to go? And as Americans, we're not trying to have. Is this what we're talking about here?
We're talking about the health of this country and our survival on the planet. We have to really be clear about what we're talking about. And in this country, we are not paying attention to it. If somebody's health is poor, everybody's paying for it. This isn't his choice to do whatever he wants and have my health premiums just go through the sky. This is something that we're all invested in. Someone's hunger is affecting my way of life. And we have to take responsibility in that way. It's a moral issue. And you can call it socialism, feeding our children. But we need to put the money right there. We need to feed every child in this country. And when you have that money and you put it to sustainable production, then everybody wins. It's like a stimulus package. Just like a stimulus package. I mean, we put $500 billion to the bank. Why couldn't we put $500 billion to the school? We could change it overnight. I mean, when Kennedy had physical education come into the schools, it happened overnight, really. Every school in this country made physical education part of the curriculum. Every kid had to take showers and run on tracks and all of the rest that came with that. And it's because we had that necessity to make sure that the population in this country was physically fit. Now we're in a whole different place. And we're talking not just about the health of this nation, we're talking about the health of the planet.
Well, I don't say this facetiously. What is capitalism at war with sustainable outcomes?
Well, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would argue that the particular system is less important than a question of accountability. If you wanted to look at the worst polluter that there was, it was the former Soviet Union picking up lock, stock, and barrel nuclear reactors out of submarines and dropping them in Novaya Zemlya because there was no accountability. So it isn't just a matter of whether it's for profit or not. The whole question is, what do you value? What a capitalist system is good at is producing products at lower cost that people value. But those values also have to include the side effects of the production process. And if you do not make part of the cost of doing business all of the side effects, so if you're a coal plant, you're paying the miners, unless you're Massey, then you're killing the miners. But so you have to pay the miners, you've got to deal with profits, you've got to deal with your expenses. Who's charging them? The kids who go to the hospital with asthma, the rising sea levels, and other stuff. Only the government. That could be done in a socialist system, it could be done in a capitalist system, or as we're in a mixed system. So the question then is getting the voters to demand that we put inside the tent of our economy all the costs so we get the price right. And in order to get the price right, we've got to value those things. We can transform the food system. We can transform a lot of stuff. The problem that we have is that the people doing it the old way will get less market share than by not having those prices forced on them, those costs forced on them. So they'll do what they did in the Olympics. How many people watch the Olympics on TV? Do you remember the ads from the fossil fuel industry? Right? The jobs and all the things. How many of them talked about mercury emissions so you can't eat more than one fish a month in Minnesota? How many talked about rising sea levels? Kids to the hospital, asthma. All of that was missing. So what you got was the north end of a southbound horse from a business that cares only about market share. And there's nothing illegal with that. And where were the politicians and where were people with philanthropy who should have been putting out counter ads on the other side? We can do what we want with our system if people care and we get the political system to move. Then we'll start using price as a mechanism to adjust. So I would not argue it's capitalism versus socialism. It's social value expressed through what voters do that allows us to run a mixed system. And when we're doing that through a media, which right now is so deeply broken, it doesn't look up the credibility of every claimant of truth. They all get out there. They all get equal status. That's why the climate problem has been so misframed. They talk about a few errors which are real and we shouldn't have, and they forget to mention that 99% is right. So they don't give the batting average, they give the errors, and everybody says, oh, we can't trust science. All of this is really part of a very deeply broken model, which comes because of blogging and other things. It's forced the media into very, very serious financial problems, so they fire their specialists. Who's left in the newsroom to be able to tell who's giving you a bunch of garbage and just doing everything stuff? Not much. So then it becomes up to you, the public, to know how to read. What do? We go to blogs. We go to the blogs of the people we trust, and we never hear the values of people we don't. How do you make a deal if you don't read somebody else's stuff? So I'm actually very, very worried about this disintegration of public information, this sort of ideologically correct set of blogs and you read nothing else. Because we do have ideological differences. If we can't negotiate them, how are we going to live together as a country?
For me, it's a re-understanding of our collective purchasing power. And for example, in the university system, students spend $5 billion a year on dining in colleges and universities. And so how do we change the values of the food that we buy such that we can create that food system that we want? So for example, just in the last year, over 3,000 students have organized such that we have more sustainable procurement practices at Iowa State University. The University of California system, where I was graduated from, we passed sustainable food policy last fall to bring in more sustainable food. Procurement policies have happened at Brown, at New York University, and all of these systems have accumulated so far of $25 million in sustainable food. And that's a lot of money so far, right? And so looking at how can we incrementally change the collective purchasing power such that we can create the system that we want.
I just wanted to say that I have been involved with a project at Yale, the Yale Sustainable Food Project, for the past 8 years. And they have put in a garden that's growing 300 different varieties of fruits and vegetables, that they've been changing the buying practices, just as you have buying tomatoes from local small producers, getting them processed, and then Yale becomes the buyer of all of that food. It's an amazingly successful way to engage the kids by feeding them the ideas. That fast food has been feeding people the ideas of fast, cheap, and easy, and that everything's disposable, and there's always more where that came from, and kitchen work is drudgery, and farming, who cares, and there are only 3 kinds of things to eat on this planet. But if we started to feed our children slow food and slow food ideas, they grow up in that. And I think the very right place is at the university. All the universities around the world It's something, I guess, that Bill Clinton is doing with his foundation, is bringing people to have the conversation about best practices, because we don't need to invent the wheel. We just need to hear how you're doing it in India, and put it together in a way that is culturally right and productive.
I've been hogging this panel for as far as questions are concerned. There's a microphone around, and please, if you would like to ask.
It's all right. It's all right.
I'm sorry?
I just want one very short comment,
Sure.
Which is that we've been talking mostly about terrestrial food. There's also ocean food. We should connect back to the previous panel. What is it? About a third of people who need ocean protein. So what does that have to do with some people who say we don't have a global warming problem? Let's shoot dust in the stratosphere like a volcano and cool the world off. And the reason is they think that's cheaper than trying to control coal burning and other things. What does that have to do with food? A lot. Because a large fraction of that food comes from reefs. And not just part of the wonderful diversity of culture and nature, but reefs have been under assault from runoff, from explosions, from overfishing. Now, as you warm up, you bleach the reef, and if you try to throw dust in the stratosphere to cool the earth and let us dump all our CO2, you acidify the oceans. So we have two whammies on the reef, and I'm very, very seriously worried there isn't going to be much ocean protein. That's important, plus it's also a big biodiversity question. So at the risk of one shameless self-promotion, my new book, Science is a Contact Sport, last chapter we talk about you can't solve this problem with dust in the stratosphere. You have to solve the problem fundamentally by doing it right. Otherwise, what you're dealing with is planetary methadone. Maybe that's better than being on heroin, but it's not safe.
Great. Thank you. You're right on.
Sorry, we hadn't got there.
Test. There we go. I have a question for Ms. Waters. And this leads right to what you were just saying. Sylvia Earle talks about one of the things to do is policy change, and she knows because she's out there doing it. So I know that you have been on the forefront of the food issues for years. You're world-renowned, and you obviously know some of the people in D.C. You've mentioned Michelle Obama and Bill Clinton. So I'm wondering what is the future of policy issue within the food, ocean, terrestrial. What is your take on that?
Well, I just want everything. I mean, I really do. I want the president of this country to stand up for the children and feed them. And I think in order for him to do that, he's going to need wind at his back. He's going to need this, all of us, to be engaged in a kind of demonstration of desire and necessity. And that if we can do that, if we can plant those gardens and plant those ideas, I think that he will have the confidence to speak for us. And when you're in that place of trying to bring consensus, and you have the corporations that are taking advantage of our children right there, that we need to demonstrate our unity. And it's so important that we come up with the most imaginative solutions, that we use art, that we use the really tantalizing and provocative ways of demonstrating our power. And it's such a positive thing to come together. All of us on this panel, I feel like, represent this new way of connecting. And it's like sewing together a quilt, a patchwork quilt. And it's going to really have a message on the quilt when we sew it together in a way. We're sewing it with food, because that's what we all have in common. But there isn't such a thing as sort of halfway good food. It's either real or it's not. And getting back to the seeds and getting back to the land, we can't have that. We can't have just an incremental idea with no vision of where we're going.
I just want to quickly, I would speak for India and the public policy there. We just had a fight. We won a battle against BT brinjal, which is this product which Monsanto was trying to, put forward in the market. And that was only because of public hearings and the people's movement. And so I really believe in that. And I really believe that if the people are sensitive enough, and if the world around, and if the culture is sensitive enough, I think you can just, achieve anything. So just like a delivery. Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
If I may, Alice, I too am a child of nature. I too am a child of nature, of spirit, of a federated republic that used to claim it was a democracy. And I want someone to stand up for me. I want to have elections that are really free and fair. I want to have ballot initiatives that mean what they say what they mean, and don't confuse me. I want to have someone protect me, that I don't have to ingest stuff that I don't want to eat. I want someone to stand up to the pharmaceutical and herbicide companies and say, no, this not only doesn't it work scientifically, but it's not good for you. I want to understand why we don't study motivation enough to understand that all of the bad guys are just guys and gals who have children, and why aren't they putting their children first? I want to live in a very different kind of world than has been inflicted upon me over the last 8.5 years. That's what I want.
Let me just briefly answer that. I have a lot of economist friends, and they're actually honest people who care. And I said, how can you leave a legacy to your kids of biotic impoverishment and risk? And their answer is, no, I'm leaving them better off. I'm leaving them a legacy of wealth and infrastructure. And that therefore, if we spend money now on problems that may be or may not be a problem later on, we're leaving them poor. They're better off richer, and then they'll know how to spend the money more efficiently in the future. So it's not that they're evil. It's that they have a rather different value orientation. They believe in infinite substitution. And what I keep saying is, but what if you're wrong? Supposing we don't find a substitute. You're committing the future to something we don't even know that we can invent, like the geoengineering I mentioned before. So we have to get through a very, very tough, value-driven conversation about how much risk you want to take with a planetary life support system, with us along as the passengers and all the other living things. That conversation hasn't even been possible in a previous administration. Now it's possible, except we got a Senate. And all of that is going to take the public insisting on the value arguments, because until we elect the people who represent the values you have, you're going to keep getting what we've got.
But you have to really grow the people, have them grow up in these values. So you're having the conversation with the people that are in the addiction and who are thinking as they are eating in those very narrow ways. And so we have to really focus on this next generation to open their minds. And fortunately, we're allowed into the public school system through the cafeteria door. And if you come into the cafeteria with these ideas, they permeate through the whole system. You're talking about biodiversity. You're counting beans instead of buttons. And you could be counting heritage beans instead of buttons. And you could be making beans Indian style and Mexican style and Italian style and learn about diversity. And it's a beautiful thing. This is a delicious way to turn it over,
Really quickly, if you want someone to stand with you, I'll stand with you.
Yeah, we're all there.
We're all there with you. I think what's really exciting for me is that there are a lot of young people who understand the situation and want to.
All right, my first question is for Professor Schneider, and then I have another question that you can all answer. But first, Professor, I want to know where you see the local food system as we work towards this ideal food system in the future. Where do you see local agriculture and a local food system meeting international food security? Where do those two converge in the future? And then I'm also wondering, once let's say 20 years down the road, maybe I'm being optimistic, maybe it might be 50, but how do you see large agribusiness transforming in that time period? Do you see them going under? Can they not exist, or are they going to all be buying local food?
Well, yeah, my crystal ball on agribusiness 30 years from now is pretty cloudy. Let me just start on, what about local? Even without food, which I know much less about than I do about energy, for example, people say, why does California have a series of climate policies? Come on, after all, if you're the only state who does it, your energy costs will be higher, and your products will be more expensive, and you'll be a loser. Well, we do it because we expect copycats. And also, we expect that in the process of inventing new clever ideas, we'll actually have something to sell people when they finally get the value system around to realize it's time to buy it. So what you want is a lot of local models. They don't have to be cost effective or scalable to the planet yet. What we have to do is show what works, what is safe, what is socially acceptable, and eventually what's cost effective and scalable. So we need, I'm not big into quoting President Bush, but Bush the first did say let 1,000 flowers bloom, probably quoting somebody else. We have to have a lot of models. We have to have a lot of models, and then we have to try to sort out the ones that work, and then go with those. So you never should say, I just want the immediate return on investment, because there are values in these models. And you know what? There are going to be a lot of failures, just like in evolution. There are a lot of failures, but if you don't try, you've got nothing. So that's where we do it. But we also have to be honest and say, we're still going to have those 8-9 billion people, and there will be some compromises that we're going to have to make certain that they can be safely fed during transition. And all of those issues will have to be part of the story. Now, what's that going to mean for agribusiness? There will always be people who will be able to figure out ways that they can produce what people, quote, want, what the demand is, cheaper and better. And that's the best part of capitalism. The question is, you have to constrain it within the side effects of the production process. That's the government job, where we have to stand with him and make certain that it insists that those costs are part of the thing. So let's do 1,000 flowers. Let's do it. But remember that they're not all going to survive intact, because we haven't run the experiment yet.
Will you join me in thanking this amazing panel? Thank you very, very much. Much appreciated. Thank you. We'll get out of your way now. Thank you.